A retired Navy SEAL came home with one old duffel bag and a promise he was not sure he could keep. On a lonely winter road, he found a chained German shepherd guarding her tiny puppy in the snow. She did not beg for help. She warned him to stay away. But Warren saw something in her eyes that felt older than fear. That dog would lead him back to his grandfather's forgotten shelter, a broken promise, and a truth buried beneath the mountain. This is not just a rescue story. It is a story about what we leave behind for the next soul in the storm. Tell us where you're watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please like and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. The last bus to Brierfall arrived as if it had been built from old weather. It came groaning through the pale afternoon, its sides streaked with road salt, its windows fogged by the breath of strangers who had already forgotten one another. Snow drifted across the small station lot in slow, bright veils. Beyond the roof of the depot, the mountains rose in blue-white folds, quiet and severe, like old judges who had heard every excuse men could make. Warren Vale stepped down with one hand on the rail and the other gripping the strap of his military duffel. For a moment, he did not move. The bus door folded shut behind him with a tired sigh. A few flakes settled on his short, undercut hair, dark brown threaded with silver at the temples. His clean-shaven face was hard in outline, strong jaw, weathered skin, a nose that looked as if life had once tried to bend it and failed. But his eyes held the trouble of a man who had seen too much distance and returned with no map for peace. He was 52 years old, 6 feet tall, broad through the shoulders, still solid in the way of men, shaped by discipline rather than mirrors. His olive-drab combat shirt fit close beneath a canvas jacket, the camouflage sleeves marked by faded horizontal bands around the upper arms. His coyote-brown tactical pants were worn at the knees. His boots were built for mud, ice, and the kind of road that did not apologize. On his left wrist sat his father's old military watch. In the duffel were a few clothes, discharge papers, a small shaving kit, and the last letter his grandfather had ever written. Silas Vale had been dead 3 months. That fact had followed Warren across airports, bus terminals, cheap motel rooms, and sleepless dawns. It had sat beside him in silence through the long ride north, saying nothing because grief, when it knew it was true, did not need to raise its voice. Brierfall waited beyond the depot like a town pretending not to stare. The same low buildings lined the main road. The same church steeple cut a white shape into the winter sky. The old diner still glowed at the corner, though the sign had changed from May's Breakfast to the Copper Elk. Snow gathered on window ledges and porch rails. Tire tracks ran brown through the white street. Familiar, not familiar. Warren adjusted the duffel on his shoulder and began walking. He had not asked anyone to meet him. That would have required admitting he was coming home instead of simply arriving at a place where he had unfinished business. Home was too warm a word to use carelessly. Men had gotten themselves killed, trusting warm words in cold places. Northstar Hollow lay several miles beyond town, past the last row of houses, past the county road that curved toward St. Oran Pass. Silas had left it to him. The old cabin, the barn, the weather-beaten storage shed, the abandoned storm shelter, the mineral spring that smoked in winter, and the black-green pines that climbed the lower mountain like a congregation. As a boy, Warren had believed Northstar Hollow was the center of the world. Silas had taught him to read animal tracks there. Deer, fox, coyote, elk. Once, a mountain lion print as large and delicate as a warning from God. His grandfather had shown him how snow remembered what men forgot. "Never mock a quiet field," Silas used to say. "It may know more than you do." Warren almost smiled at the memory. Almost. The town thinned behind him. Houses gave way to fenced fields, then to open land. The snow was fresh enough to brighten everything but old enough near the road to be bruised by passing tires. The sky held a clean winter light, not warm, but honest. It made every fence post, every bare branch, every strand of wire stand out with painful clarity. He had thought the walk would help. Instead, each step carried him backward. Here was the bend where he had once raced a rusted bicycle and lost half the skin from his left palm. There was the ditch where Silas had pulled a drunk hunter's truck out with a tractor and a vocabulary not fit. Farther on, the pines began, and with them the old smell of resin, snow, and cold stone. Warren touched the watch at his wrist. His father had worn it through 2 deployments. Silas had kept it in a drawer after the funeral, wrapped in cloth, as if time itself needed to be protected from dust. When Warren had enlisted, Silas gave it to him without ceremony. "Don't let it make you sentimental," the old man had said. Then he had looked away too quickly. Warren walked on. A silver pickup came fast from behind, engine smooth under the crunch of tires. Warren stepped toward the shoulder without turning fully. The truck passed close enough to throw dirty snow across his boots. Its body flashed pale beneath the sun, clean in the arrogant way expensive work vehicles sometimes were when someone else did the work. He caught only fragments. A dent near the rear fender, a dark shape behind the wheel, a smear of mud across the plate. Then it was ahead of him, curving toward the trees. Warren watched it go for 2 seconds, no more. He had spent too many years noticing vehicles, exits, hands, glass, silence. He did not want to live that way forever. A truck passing on a road did not need to become a threat, simply because his body remembered 1,000 reasons to measure it. "Not everything is a perimeter," he muttered. The words turned white in the air and disappeared. A mile later, the road narrowed. The fields pulled away. Pines leaned closer, their branches holding snow in thick white shelves. The afternoon grew quieter. Not empty. Winter was never empty. But the sounds became smaller. The squeak of Warren's boots, the dry click of branches, the faint hiss of wind combing through needles. Then he heard it. A low growl. Warren stopped. It came from the right side of the road, near a bent pine whose trunk curved outward before reaching up, as if the tree had once tried to leave and changed its mind. The growl came again, thin, hoarse, controlled. Warren did not move toward it at first. He let his eyes adjust to the shapes beneath the branches. There, half-shadowed by snow and root, stood a German shepherd, female, from the look of her frame, yellow and black beneath dirt, hunger, and weather. The black over her back lay like a torn cloak. Her chest and legs were a warmer gold, though dulled by cold and neglect. She was too thin, far too thin. Her ribs did not show sharply, but the hollowness behind them did. One ear stood high, the other had a small, ragged notch near the edge, making it tilt when she focused. A chain ran from her neck to the tree. Not a leash, a chain. Short enough that she could not reach the road, short enough that she could not leave the roots. Behind her, tucked into a hollow where snow had drifted around exposed wood, a puppy trembled in a nest of dead needles. German shepherd too, yellow-black, all oversized paws and frightened eyes. One ear flopped forward. The other tried bravely to stand and failed. The mother placed herself between Warren and the pup, her head lowered, her lips lifted. The growl deepened. Warren felt something old and cold open under his ribs. Not anger yet. Recognition. There were ways the world taught the innocent to become gates. "Easy," he said. The shepherd's eyes sharpened. Warren did not take another step. He lowered his duffel slowly into the snow. The metal zipper clicked, and the dog flinched so hard the chain snapped tight. The puppy made a small sound behind her. Warren froze. For one absurd moment, he saw himself from the outside, a tired man on a lonely road, kneeling in snow before a starving dog, as if asking permission from some winter guardian in an old myth. Silas would have had something dry to say about that. Probably that Warren had finally found someone in Brierfall more stubborn than himself. The thought almost broke the tightness in his chest. Almost. He turned his body slightly sideways, making himself less direct, less large. His hands stayed visible. He did not stare into the dog's eyes for too long. The habits came back from old training sessions with working dogs overseas. Not mastery, not magic, just respect for an animal that could read threat faster than language. The shepherd watched his hands, not his face. His hands. Warren noticed then the worn line around her shoulders and chest where a harness had once sat. Not the casual rub of a pet collar. Something broader. Purpose-built, repeated. Her stance, even exhausted, was not wild panic. She held position with discipline. She guarded the puppy, but she also kept one side open toward the trees, one possible exit measured, though denied by the chain. "You've been trained," Warren said quietly. The dog growled again, but softer. "Yeah," he murmured. "I don't blame you." He reached slowly toward his jacket pocket, then stopped when her body stiffened. "Not yet," he said, as if answering her. "Fair." Warren stayed there long enough for the cold to climb through his knees. Cars did not pass. No house stood nearby. No mailbox. No fence gate. Whoever had left them here had chosen the kind of place where a living thing could disappear without inconveniencing anyone's conscience. The puppy shivered behind the mother. Its little body shook in helpless waves. The mother wanted to turn. Warren saw it. Her ear twitched back toward the pup, but her eyes would not leave him. That was the moment that reached him. Not the chain, not the ribs, the choice. She was freezing, starving, trapped by iron, and still she spent what strength remained on protection. Warren lowered his gaze and slowly unzipped the duffel. He pulled out a folded thermal shirt and tossed it not at the dogs, but to the side, halfway between them. The shepherd tracked the movement, but did not lunge. Then Warren made a small hand signal, not a command exactly, more an old shape from an old life. Hold. The shepherd's ears shifted, barely. But Warren saw it. His heart gave one hard beat. He made the signal again, slower this time. His voice stayed low. Hold! The growl faded into breath. Not trust, not peace. But listening. The world narrowed to snow, chain, dog, puppy, breath. Warren reached into the side pocket of the duffel and found the compact multi-tool he had carried for years. He opened it slowly, turning his shoulder so the shine of metal did not flash directly at her. The chain was looped through a cheap padlock near the tree, half frozen, the metal rimmed with dirty ice. The shepherd lifted her lip again when he moved closer. Warren stopped. "I know," he said. "Hands are complicated." The dog's eyes flicked to his face then. Just once. That was all he needed to continue. He inched forward, not toward her head, not toward the puppy, but toward the tree. The chain trembled from the dog's tension. Warren's fingers were stiff by the time he reached the lock. He did not try to touch her. He did not reach over her. He worked beside her, close enough to feel the heat of her fear. The lock was cheap, but the cold had made it stubborn. Warren braced it against the bark and worked the tool into the shackle. Metal scraped. The sound made the puppy whimper. The mother snapped her head back toward the pup. In that tiny movement, Warren saw the full shape of her terror. She expected pain to arrive whenever she looked away. His jaw tightened. "No," he whispered, though he did not know whether he was speaking to her, to the road, or to the kind of person who could do this and keep driving. The lock gave with a sharp crack. The chain fell loose into the snow. The shepherd did not run. She stood there, shaking, suddenly free, and unsure what freedom was asking of her. Then she turned, pressed her nose to the puppy, and licked its face once, twice, hard and urgent, as if counting it back into the world. Warren let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. He removed his canvas jacket, then hesitated. The combat shirt beneath would not be enough for the walk, but the puppy's trembling had become too weak, too small. Warren wrapped the jacket around the little body and lifted it carefully. The puppy weighed almost nothing. The mother's head snapped toward him. Warren stopped with the pup cradled low, not against his chest yet. "You can come with me," he said, "or you can bite me and come with me anyway, which would be inconvenient for both of us." The mother stared. The puppy gave a soft squeak from inside the jacket. The shepherd stepped forward. One step, then another. Her chain dragged behind her for a moment until Warren unhooked the remaining length from the collar with slow hands. He refused to tighten anything around her neck. Instead, he took a strap from his duffel and looped it loosely through the old harness marks around her chest, enough to guide, not enough to own. She allowed it, barely. A king might have granted less. Warren lifted the puppy against him and picked up his duffel with his free hand. The road ahead bent toward Northstar Hollow, where Silas's cabin waited with cold rooms, old ghosts, and questions Warren was not ready to answer. He looked down at the mother dog. Her golden black coat was clumped with snow. Her notched ear leaned toward him. Her eyes remained wary, but there was something else beneath it now. Not gratitude. Gratitude was too simple, too human. It was assessment, a fragile decision renewed with every breath. Warren began walking. After 3 steps, he stopped and looked back at the tree. The chain lay in the snow like a dead snake. He thought of Silas's letter in his duffel. Northstar Hollow is not something you own. It is something you must learn to deserve. Warren had resented the sentence when he first read it. Now, with a half-frozen puppy bundled in his jacket and a wounded shepherd limping at his side, he felt the words shift their weight. "Come on," he said softly. "No one gets left out here." The mother dog did not lean on him. She did not soften. But she walked. Together, they moved down the road toward the darkening pines. Snow brightened the shoulders of the hills. The sky lowered into evening, blue at the edges, silver above the pass. Northstar Hollow waited somewhere beyond the trees. Not yet home, not yet promise, but no longer empty. Far behind them, beyond the first wall of pines, the silver pickup had stopped. Its engine idled low. A man sat behind the wheel, watching Warren Vale disappear up the road with the dogs. His hands rested still on the steering wheel. For a moment, the truck's headlights stayed on, 2 pale eyes in the falling dusk. Then they went dark. Northstar Hollow did not welcome Warren with warmth. It waited for him. The cabin stood at the edge of the field, with snow gathered along its roofline and porch steps, its windows dark, its chimney cold. Pine trees crowded behind it in black-green ranks, their branches heavy with white. Farther up, the mountains shouldered into the evening, half hidden by blue shadow. The old place looked smaller than Warren remembered, and somehow more stubborn, like an aging man refusing help while leaning on a cane. The brass wind chime on the porch moved once as he climbed the steps. A soft note rang out. Warren stopped with the puppy bundled against his chest and the mother dog limping several feet behind him. The sound had been Silas's, not his voice, nothing so merciful. Just a thin bronze note Warren had heard through 100 childhood winters, after chores, before supper, during storms when the whole world disappeared beyond the porch rail. For a second, he was 12 again, wearing boots too big for him, watching his grandfather knock snow from a shovel. Then the German shepherd growled behind him. The past stepped back. "Right," Warren said quietly. "One thing at a time." He unlocked the door with the key Francis Bell had mailed him 2 weeks earlier. The lock resisted, then turned with a dry scrape. Cold air breathed out of the cabin. Inside, the house smelled of old wood, ashes, dust, and something faintly sweet pine resin trapped in the walls. Warren entered first, not because he wanted to command the room, but because the mother dog needed to see that nothing leapt out from the dark. The puppy shifted inside his jacket. The mother dog stood at the threshold, head low, one ear high, and the notched ear angled outward. She scanned the main room with tired precision. Doorways, corners, windows, Warren's hands. Her chain was gone, but her body had not yet been told. No cages, Warren said. No tricks. She did not believe him. That was fair. He set the puppy down near the wall, away from the door but not trapped in a corner. Then he moved slowly to the iron stove. His fingers remembered the work before his mind did. Open the flue, clear ash, stack kindling, strike a match. The flame caught small and yellow, licking along curls of bark. The mother dog flinched at the first crackle. Warren froze, match still in hand. The puppy made a tiny sound, more breath than cry. That pulled the mother forward. She crossed the room with a limp that made Warren's jaw tighten and dropped beside the puppy, placing her body between him and every possible danger the room could invent. Warren backed away from the stove. The fire grew. Slowly, warmth began to enter the cabin like an apology, too ashamed to speak loudly. Warren found blankets in a cedar chest beneath the window. Silas had folded them with the old man's usual severe precision, as if even wool ought to stand inspection. Warren shook one out, then another. He placed them near the wall, close enough to the heat, far enough from the stove. The mother dog watched every movement. Her coat was yellow and black beneath dirt and ice. The black along her back lay like a battered saddle. Gold showed at her chest and legs, muted by neglect. She was beautiful in the way ruined things could be beautiful, not because damage improved them, but because life still insisted on showing through. The puppy crawled into the blanket and tried to stand. His paws slid. He collapsed onto his belly with a soft grunt that, under any other circumstances, might have been funny. Warren almost smiled. The puppy blinked up at him with round, honey-brown eyes, one ear folded over his face like a bad hat. "All right," Warren murmured. "You're not tactical. Good to know." The mother dog's gaze sharpened, as if she disapproved of jokes near her child. Warren lifted both hands. Understood. He left them there and searched the kitchen. Most of the cabinets were bare, but Silas had never believed in being completely unprepared. In the pantry, Warren found 2 sealed bags of emergency dog food, a tin of broth powder, and a plastic box marked Winter Routes. Animal Kit in black marker. His hand paused on the lid. Silas's handwriting. Angular, deep, impatient. Warren opened the box and found gauze, old antiseptic wipes, a cracked thermometer, paw balm, a roll of soft wrap, and a small notebook bound with a rubber band. He set the supplies on the counter. Then he opened the notebook. The first pages held practical notes. Storm shelter inventory, road closures, rescue signal codes, names of volunteers long gone from Warren's memory. Then, near the middle, a word appeared again and again. Astra. Astra cleared West Ridge Trail in 42 minutes. Astra alerted at Creek Hollow before visual contact. Astra refused Old Bridge crossing. Found split beam underneath. Trust the dog. Warren read that line twice. Trust the dog. Behind him, the mother dog shifted on the blanket. Her eyes remained open. The puppy had found the edge of her chest and pressed into it, shivering less now. Warren turned the notebook toward the firelight. Astra. The name did not feel like a label. It felt like a door in the house had opened without sound. He looked at the mother dog. "Is that you?" Her notched ear twitched. Warren did not take that as an answer. He had learned not to turn coincidence into prophecy. Men did foolish things when they decided the universe was speaking only to them. Still, he placed the notebook on the table where he could see it. The night settled around Northstar Hollow. Warren warmed a little broth and softened the dog food until the smell filled the cabin. The puppy reacted first, lifting his head with sudden, unsteady devotion. His front paws pushed against the blanket. He fell forward, nose nearly into the bowl before Warren had set it down. The mother dog blocked him with her shoulder. Not harshly. Carefully. She smelled the food first. Warren stepped back at once and turned away. He stood at the sink, looking out the dark window while pretending not to listen. Behind him, there was silence. Then the faint sound of eating, a small, frantic mess of it from the puppy, a slower, measured sound from the mother. Warren kept his eyes on the window until his chest loosened by a degree. He had eaten worse meals in worse places and called them victories. But this 2 dogs eating without fear, becoming punishment, felt more delicate than victory. It felt like holding a candle in a barn full of wind. Later, he spread his bedroll on the floor instead of taking Silas's room. He told himself it was because the dogs were in the main room. That was not the whole truth. Silas's bedroom door remained closed at the end of the hall. Warren had seen it from the corner of his eye all evening. Plain wood, brass knob, a dark line beneath. He could open it. He would have to open it, but not tonight. Some rooms deserved the courtesy of warning. The cabin made old sounds as the fire settled. Wood ticked. Snow slid softly from the roof. The puppy hiccuped in his sleep. The mother dog did not sleep. Every time Warren opened his eyes, she was watching the door. Not him, not the fire. The door. Sometime after midnight, Warren woke to the scrape of claws on floorboards. He did not sit up quickly. His body wanted to. Training came awake like a blade. He let it pass through him and kept his breathing even. The mother dog stood in the hallway. Moonlight from the front window silvered her thin frame. She faced Silas's closed bedroom door, head lifted, body utterly still. The puppy slept in a curl near the stove. Warren pushed himself slowly onto one elbow. The dog did not look back. She stared at the door as if waiting for a man who had once given orders from the other side. Something in Warren's throat tightened. Grief was rude that way. It had no respect for timing. It entered without knocking, sat in the best chair, and looked at a man until he admitted it had always been there. "He's gone," Warren said softly. The dog's ear moved. Warren did not know whether she understood the words. Perhaps she understood only the shape of absence. Perhaps that was enough. The next morning came pale and clean. Frost patterned the kitchen window in branching lines. The field beyond the cabin glowed under fresh snow. Smoke from the chimney rose straight at first, then leaned toward the pines. Warren found the old landline dead, as expected, but his cell phone caught one bar near the kitchen window if he held it at shoulder height and did not breathe too much, which felt like the kind of joke Silas would have appreciated without smiling. He called the veterinary clinic in town. The woman who answered knew his name before he finished saying it. "Warren Vale," she said. "I wondered when you'd come back." He did not ask how she knew. In Brierfall, privacy traveled slowly, and gossip wore snow boots. "Doctor Keene?" "Speaking." Her voice was dry, practical, a little rough from cold or coffee, maybe both. "I found 2 dogs on St. Oran Road, a female German shepherd and a pup. The mother was chained to a tree, starved, cold, possibly injured. I need someone to look at them." There was a pause. Not hesitation. The sound of a person rearranging her day around what mattered. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said. "Don't force food. Keep them warm. Don't touch the mother's neck if she reacts." "I figured that out." "Good. Then you're already smarter than half the county." She hung up. Warren stared at the phone for a moment. "Friendly place," he muttered. The puppy chose that moment to toddle toward his boot, seize a lace in his tiny teeth, and pull with the seriousness of a man dragging a body from a battlefield. Warren looked down. The puppy growled. It was no larger than a cough. "You're terrifying," Warren said. The mother dog raised her head from the blanket. The puppy tugged again and promptly fell backward when the lace slipped free. He rolled once, landed on his side, and blinked in offended confusion. For the first time since the bus station, Warren laughed. Not much, just one breath. But the sound changed the room. The mother dog looked at him, not alarmed exactly, measuring. As if laughter was another human tool, and she had not yet decided whether it cut. The knock came at the door 27 minutes later. Not loud. 2 firm taps. Warren opened it to find a woman on the porch with a blue-gray field coat, a black medical bag, and dark hair tied low at the back of her neck. Silver threaded through the hair near her temples, not arranged for dignity, merely earned. Her face was narrow, tired around the eyes, and steady in the mouth. There was a small red scratch across one wrist. Dr. Naomi Keene glanced once at Warren, once past him into the cabin. "Where?" Warren stepped aside. She entered without bringing the weather in with her. That was the first thing he respected. The mother dog rose. Naomi stopped immediately. She did not crouch too fast. She did not sweeten her voice into nonsense. She simply turned her body slightly sideways, as Warren had done on the road, and let the dog look. Then Naomi's face changed. Only a little. Enough. "My God," she said quietly. "Astra." Warren felt the name settle in the cabin. The mother dog did not move. Naomi swallowed once, then lowered herself to one knee at a distance. Her dry voice had lost none of its control, but something older and softer moved beneath it. "Hello, girl," she said. "I looked for you longer than was convenient. Astra." This time the dog's response was unmistakable. Her eyes shifted, not trust, recognition. Warren looked from Naomi to the notebook on the table. "You knew her." Naomi did not take her eyes off the dog. Half this mountain knew her, or owed her. The examination took time because Naomi did not steal permission from a wounded animal and call it care. She watched first, breathing, weight distribution, eyes, gums, when Astra allowed a brief look. The wound marks near the neck made Naomi's mouth flatten into a line. The puppy, on the other hand, attempted to climb into her medical bag. Naomi caught him with one hand and lifted him gently. "And who are you?" The puppy licked her thumb. "Shameless," she said. Warren said, "He tried to kill my bootlace." "Ambitious, then." Naomi checked him over, her hands efficient and careful. "About 8 weeks, underfed, cold stress, no obvious fracture. He'll need small meals and warmth. He have a name?" "Not yet." Naomi looked at the puppy, who was now chewing the edge of her coat with deep moral commitment. "Milo," she said. Warren raised an eyebrow. "You name all your patients? Only the ones who bite government property or my clothing." "That coat government property?" "No, but he doesn't know that." Milo sneezed. The cabin seemed to exhale. For a while the morning became work. Naomi cleaned small abrasions, gave instructions, measured, listened, wrote notes in a pad. Warren obeyed without argument. He had always preferred orders when they made sense. Only after Astra settled back near the wall did Naomi stand and notice the notebook on the table. Her eyes went to Silas's handwriting. "He kept that," she said. Warren closed the cover. "You knew about it?" "I knew about her. The search team. The winter routes. Silas built half that system with stubbornness and bad coffee." Naomi looked toward Astra. When the rescue unit shut down, the paperwork said she was transferred to a private handler. "You believe that?" "No." The answer came too fast. Naomi looked at Warren then, fully. "But disbelief doesn't hold up in court, and it doesn't bring a dog back." The fire popped. Astra's head lifted at the sound, then lowered again when Milo crawled against her chest. Naomi packed her bag more slowly than she needed to. "Keep the mother away from collars," she said. "Harness only, and not tight. Don't reach over her head. Don't crowd the pup if she's watching. Feed small, often. If she refuses, turn your back. She's had reason to distrust hands." Warren nodded. At the door, Naomi paused. "Warren?" He looked up. "Silas would have called her Astra. I found the name in his notes." "No," Naomi said. "I mean, he called her that because she always found light when the rest of us were blind." Then she left. Her truck rolled away down the snowy drive, leaving 2 dark tracks behind. The cabin grew quiet again, but not as it had been before. This quiet now contained breathing, the scratch of Milo's paws against the blanket, Astra's watchful stillness, the low working murmur of the stove. Warren spent the afternoon cleaning, not because the house needed it most, though it did, because his hands needed honest tasks. He cleared ash, stacked wood, opened cabinets, checked the pantry, wiped dust from the table. In one drawer he found a bundle of letters tied with twine. In another, maps. In the lower shelf of the bookcase, behind a row of old field guides, he found an envelope with his name written across it. Warren, Silas's hand. He stood there a long time before opening it. The letter inside was not long. Warren read it once standing, then again sitting at the table. Northstar Hollow is not something you own. It is something you must learn to deserve. There were other lines, practical ones. Apologies too crooked to stand upright. A mention of the old storm shelter. A warning that some promises outlive the men who make them, but that sentence did the damage. Warren set the letter down. "I served," he said to the empty room. Astra watched him. "I did what was asked." The house did not argue. That made it worse. He had come back thinking inheritance was a final errand. Sign papers, walk through rooms, decide what could be sold, stored, burned, or ignored. But Silas, dead and still inconvenient, had managed to turn a piece of land into a question. By evening, Milo had eaten twice, slept 3 times, and declared war on a piece of firewood. Astra had eaten only when Warren stood in the kitchen with his back turned. She allowed him no closer than several feet, except once, when Milo rolled too far from the blanket and Warren gently nudged the pup back with the side of his boot. Astra watched, did not growl. That felt like more than he deserved. Night lowered over Northstar Hollow. Warren was folding an old tarp near the back door when Astra stood suddenly. No growl this time, no warning. She moved past him, stiff but determined, and went to the side door that led toward the old shed. The storage shed sat a short distance from the cabin, half swallowed by snowdrifts, its roof sagging under white weight. Warren had not planned to open it until morning. The hinge would be frozen. The path needed clearing. His body was tired. Astra scratched once at the door. Then she looked back at him, not pleading, insisting. Milo, from the blanket, gave a sleepy chirp and flopped onto his back. Warren stared at Astra. "You know," he said, "most guests wait a day before assigning chores." Astra scratched again. Warren put on his jacket. The cold met him hard outside. He took a lantern from the hook by the door and crossed the yard with Astra at his side. She did not limp as badly now, or perhaps purpose carried her better than comfort could. The shed door resisted until Warren shouldered it open. Dust and old wood smell rolled out. Inside were rusted tools, coiled rope, stacked crates, a broken snow shovel, and shadows thick enough to feel inhabited. Astra entered first. Warren lifted the lantern. She walked past the tools, past the crates, past an old workbench where Silas had once sharpened blades and cursed dull men in the same breath. She stopped in the far corner. The floorboards there were darker with age, except for one. One plank near the wall was newer. Cleaner. Wrong. Astra lowered her head and touched it with her nose. Then she looked at Warren. The lantern flame shifted in the cold air. Light moved over the floor, over Astra's notched ear, over the new board set among the old, like a lie trying to wear the right coat. Warren crouched. For the first time since finding her on the road, he did not see only a wounded dog. He saw memory. Not human memory, not words, not proof, something older. A path worn inside the body, a loyalty that had survived hunger, iron, snow, and fear. Warren placed one hand on the floor near the board. Astra did not move away. Behind them, the cabin windows glowed faintly through falling snow. Warren looked at the plank, then at Astra. "All right," he whispered. "Show me what he left behind." By the third morning, Northstar Hollow had begun to sound less like an abandoned cabin and more like a house negotiating with life. The stove clicked and breathed. Meltwater dripped from the eaves in slow, uneven beats. Milo had discovered that his paws made a pleasing thump against the floorboards when he tried to chase his own shadow, though he had not yet discovered why the shadow refused to be bitten. Astra watched from her blanket near the wall. She was stronger than she had been on the road, but strength had returned to her like a cautious visitor. She still did not sleep with her back to the room. She still placed herself between Milo and any door that opened. When Warren moved too fast, her notched ear angled sharply, and her body became a locked gate. Warren had learned not to apologize every time. Too many apologies were another kind of noise. Instead, he moved with a steadier rhythm: coffee, firewood, water, food, quiet. A man could build trust the way he built a winter fire, not by throwing everything in at once, but by feeding the flame what it could bear. That morning, he carried Silas's letter folded in his shirt pocket. He had read it 5 times. Northstar Hollow is not something you own. It is something you must learn to deserve. The sentence had settled under his skin like a splinter. Warren stood at the kitchen window with the dead landline receiver in one hand and his cell phone in the other, searching for enough signal to make another call. Snow shone across the field. The pines beyond the cabin stood black and holy under their white crowns. The phone finally caught one bar. He called his aunt in Spokane. Lydia Vale Mercer answered on the 4th ring, with traffic noise behind her and the brisk impatience of someone who had made peace with efficiency long ago. "Warren," she said, "I heard you arrived. News travels. In that town?" News wears boots and knocks before breakfast. Lydia was Silas's younger niece, 58, a woman Warren had seen only at funerals and 2 tense Thanksgiving dinners. Her voice had the crisp edge of city offices, clean kitchens, and opinions already filed in folders. "You've been to the property?" she asked. "I'm standing in it." A pause. "Then you've seen the condition." Warren looked at the peeling paint near the window, the patched floor, the sink that groaned when the pipe warmed. Milo sneezed near the stove and startled himself. "I've seen worse!" "That is not a financial strategy." "No?" "Warren, listen to me." Lydia's voice softened, but only slightly. "You just got out. You do not need a mountain property with road fees, tax complications, legal restrictions, and a half-dead storm shelter attached to your name." Warren touched the edge of Silas's letter through his shirt pocket. "You think I should sell. I think Silas should have sold years ago." The words landed harder than Warren expected. Lydia sighed. He was a good man. He was also impossible. Those 2 facts do not cancel each other out. Astra lifted her head, hearing the change in Warren's breathing. Lydia continued, "There are people interested in taking it off your hands, serious people, developers with resources. You could walk away clean." "Walk away clean." The phrase sounded almost merciful. Warren looked at his boots. There was mud dried along the edges from the shed. Dog hair clung to his pants. Ash dust marked one sleeve of his olive-drab combat shirt. He did not feel clean. He felt present. "I need to understand the paperwork first," he said. "Then see Frances Bell." She kept Silas's legal mess in order somehow. "And Warren?" "Yeah. Do not confuse guilt with duty." The line clicked dead before he could answer. For a while, Warren stood with the phone in his hand, listening to the stove. Milo waddled toward him with a piece of kindling in his mouth, carrying it with the solemn pride of a knight bearing a sword. The stick was twice the length of his head. He tripped over it, rolled onto his side, and refused to release his prize. Warren looked down. "You're in charge of logistics now?" Milo sneezed again. Astra's gaze moved from the puppy to Warren. For a fraction of a second, the old house did not feel like a test. It felt like a ridiculous little kingdom, guarded by a starving queen and ruled by a puppy with poor balance. Then Warren remembered the newer plank in the shed, the tin box beneath it. He had not opened it yet. He left it on the kitchen table while he drove into town. Brierfall looked brighter in morning than it had on his arrival. Snow lay clean on the rooftops. Icicles hung from the pharmacy awning. A man in a green parka shoveled outside the feed store, lifting one hand when Warren passed, then looking twice, as if matching the grown man to the boy he might once have known. Frances Bell's office sat above a hardware store, reached by a narrow staircase that smelled of dust, paper, and old radiator heat. Her name was painted on the frosted glass door in black letters that had not changed style since the 1970s. Inside, the office was small but disciplined. Shelves bowed under law books and county binders. A map of the mountain district hung beside a window overlooking the courthouse square. The woman behind the desk did not rise quickly. She finished marking a page with a black fountain pen, capped it, and then looked up. Frances Bell was 61, with short silver hair cut neatly at her jaw and brown eyes behind thin framed glasses. She had the calm of a person who understood that panic rarely survived proper documentation. "Warren Vale," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Do not ma'am me unless you plan to follow my advice." "That sounds dangerous." Her mouth moved in what might have been a smile, if smiles in law offices had not been kept under strict regulation. "Sit." Warren sat. Frances opened a folder thick enough to concern him. "Your grandfather left you Northstar Hollow," she began, "but not in the simple way people mean when they say left." "Of course he didn't." "No. Silas had a gift for making affection legally inconvenient." Warren felt the corner of his mouth move despite himself. Frances slid a document across the desk. Northstar Covenant, a conservation easement and community storm shelter agreement established between Silas Vale and the county 29 years ago. You inherit residential rights, land stewardship rights, and management responsibility. You do not inherit the right to sell the land for commercial development. Warren read the first page slowly. The legal language was dense, but the shape beneath it was clear. Northstar Hollow was not merely land, it was a promise written into paper. The old storm shelter beneath St. Oran Pass had to remain available during winter months. Supplies were to be maintained, access paths kept open when possible. The spring, forest edge, and upper meadow could not be developed beyond strict limits. You're saying I own it, but don't own it. I'm saying Silas understood ownership as responsibility. The law, for once, agreed with him in writing. Warren leaned back. Outside, a snowplow grumbled past the square. Frances turned another page. Now the problem. White Crown Ventures has petitioned the county to review stewardship failure. I've heard the name. You will hear it more. Frances removed her glasses and cleaned them with a cloth from her drawer. The motion seemed ceremonial. They claim the shelter is no longer functional. They claim supplies vanished under Silas's watch. They claim the radio was dead, the access road neglected, and your grandfather's final filings inconsistent. Warren's hand tightened on the chair arm. They're saying he wasn't fit. They are suggesting it with manners. And what do they want? The right to assume restoration management under a public-private development proposal. Resort access roads. Winter lodging, guided snow routes. The county gets economic growth. White Crown gets the mountain corridor. The covenant becomes a problem solved by reinterpretation. Warren stared at the map on the wall. Northstar Hollow sat marked in pencil near the lower ridge. Above it, St. Oran Pass curved through white space. "So they don't take the land," he said. "They make the land stop being what it is." Frances's eyes sharpened. "Your grandfather said you were observant." "He said a lot of things. He also said, you might need to be angry for a while before you became useful." Warren looked back at her. Frances slid a second card across the desk. White, heavy stock. Blue lettering. Alden Crosswell, Regional Development Director, White Crown Ventures. He asked whether I had heard from you. When? Yesterday. Warren absorbed that. The silver pickup on the road, the headlights beyond the pines. A line of cold moved through him, clean and narrow. Frances watched his face. "You recognize the name?" "No. You may recognize the story." Alden was rescued by Silas during the storm of '94. St. Oran Pass. He was 24, foolish, underdressed, and almost dead by morning. Silas found him because Astra's predecessor alerted on the lower ravine. Warren looked at the card again. Alden Crosswell. A rescued man coming back to buy the place that saved him. There was a kind of poetry in that. Not good poetry. The kind carved on a tomb because nobody had the courage to say the dead had been betrayed. Frances leaned back. White Crown will make you an offer, a generous one. They will call it practical. They will call it relief. They will use your service, your fatigue, and your grandfather's age as reasons you should let better-equipped people handle the future. They already started. Lydia? Warren said nothing. Frances gave a small nod. She is not cruel, only tired from watching Silas wrestle the world with both hands and no helmet. Warren took the card. What do I need? Records. Proof the shelter failed because of interference, not neglect. Proof Silas remained competent. Proof the covenant still serves public value. Frances put her glasses back on. And time, which rich men purchase more easily than honest ones. Warren stood. At the door, she added, Do not meet Alden alone unless you intend to hear exactly what you are tempted by. Warren looked back. Frances capped her pen again. That was not legal advice, she said. That was old woman advice. It is usually more expensive. The Copper Elk was warm, crowded enough to hum, but not enough to hide. Warren chose a booth near the back wall out of habit. He had barely touched the coffee when Alden Crosswell entered, as if the room had been expecting him. He was 54, tall, trim, and careful in every inch. His charcoal wool coat sat perfectly on his shoulders. His dark hair, touched with gray at the temples, was combed with a precision that felt less vain than strategic. He greeted the waitress by name, touched an elderly man lightly on the shoulder, and crossed the diner with an expression of modest warmth. Warren understood immediately why people trusted him. Alden looked like a man who had never had to raise his voice because rooms lowered theirs for him. Mr. Vale, Alden said, welcome home. Warren did not stand. Alden Crosswell. Alden's smile adjusted by half a degree. He slid into the opposite seat. Frances warned you. She gave me a card. Frances gives everyone cards. Warnings are her love language. The waitress brought coffee without asking. Alden thanked her by name. Warren noticed the gloves beside his cup. Dark leather, expensive, folded neatly. His right thumb, bare for the moment, held a pale scar running along the side. Alden saw him notice. Old climbing accident, he said. Warren looked at his coffee. Mountain keeps receipts. Alden laughed softly. Silas used to say things like that. Silas earned it. Yes. Alden's voice warmed with practiced grief. He did. For a few minutes, he spoke of Brierfall. Not as a predator would speak of prey, but as a priest might speak of a fading church. Jobs leaving, roads underfunded, younger adults moving away, houses selling to outsiders who visited twice a year and called it belonging. White Crown, he said, could bring work, road maintenance, emergency infrastructure, tourism, tax relief. A future with lights on. Northstar Hollow can be part of that, Alden said. Or it can continue collapsing under a noble idea no one has the money to maintain. Warren did not answer. Alden leaned forward, not too much. You served a long time. Yes, you deserve rest. There it was. Not a threat, not pressure. Mercy, sharpened into a tool. Alden placed a sealed envelope on the table. An offer, more than fair. Enough for you to start over without being chained to an old man's stubbornness. Warren looked at the envelope. For one dangerous second, he saw it. A clean apartment somewhere warmer. No roof to repair. No legal fight. No dead man's sentence folded in his pocket. No wounded dog watching doors. No puppy turning the floor into a battlefield of socks and wood chips. A life where no one asked him to deserve anything. The temptation did not roar. It whispered. That made it worse. Warren touched his father's watch beneath the table. Tick, tick, tick. Alden's voice softened. Your grandfather was a good man, but good men often leave burdens and call them blessings. Warren looked up. The diner noise seemed to dim. A man who was saved by my grandfather should be careful how he speaks about burdens. Alden's expression did not break, but the warmth left his eyes for a moment, quick as a match blown out. Then it returned. Of course, he said, think it over. He stood, buttoned his coat, and picked up his gloves. At the door, 3 townspeople stopped him to talk. He gave them each the right version of himself. Warren left the envelope on the table. The waitress came by after Alden had gone. Her name tag read Maribel, though Warren did not yet know her story. She was in her 60s, with silver-brown hair pinned loosely, and a face that had learned to smile without surrendering its opinions. "You forgetting that?" she asked, nodding at the envelope. "No." "Good," she said, and walked away. When Warren returned to Northstar Hollow, Astra was standing at the window, not waiting for him exactly, watching the road beyond him. Milo attacked his bootlace with visible relief. Warren shut the door and placed no envelope on the table because he had not brought it home. Instead, he went to the shed. Astra followed. The newer plank came up with less resistance than expected. Whoever had placed it there had not meant it to be found by accident, but neither had they understood Silas's habits. The old man had hidden things the way he stacked firewood, practical, dry, and always where a person with patience would eventually look. Beneath the board lay a metal tin wrapped in oilcloth. Warren carried it inside. Astra stayed close enough to see it, far enough not to be trapped by it. Milo attempted to climb onto Warren's knee and failed with dignity. The tin opened with a soft pop. Inside were maps, photographs, rescue logs, folded notes, and a list of names written in Silas's hard hand. Adults rescued during winter storms. Truckers, hikers, linemen, hunters. A widowed nurse. A man found half buried near the creek. Dates, temperatures, routes, conditions. No drama. Just lives, counted carefully. Warren lifted a photograph. Silas stood beside the old storm shelter. Younger than Warren had last known him. Beard white, hat crooked, one hand resting on the back of a strong German shepherd. Not Astra, older dog. Beside them stood several volunteers. Faces red from cold, smiling like people who had survived something together. Beneath the photos lay a folded document. County Rescue Incident Record. Winter Storm. February 1994. Subject recovered, Alden Crosswell, age 24. Warren read slowly. The document confirmed the Northstar shelter had been stocked. Firewood, blankets, radio, emergency rations, dog team assistance. Silas Vale listed as responding steward. Subject conscious upon recovery. Subject statement attached. Warren unfolded the attached page. Alden's younger signature sat at the bottom. Above it, written in formal county language, was a statement confirming that Silas Vale had acted decisively, that the shelter had been operational, and that without Northstar Hollow's winter system, Alden Crosswell likely would not have survived the night. Warren set the paper down. Astra lowered herself beside the table, eyes fixed not on him, but on the tin. The house seemed to gather around them. Warren thought of Alden's clean coat, his soft voice, his offer of rest, his scarred thumb, his phrase, "an old man's stubbornness." Some men received mercy and carried it forward. Some men received mercy and spent the rest of their lives trying to prove they had never needed it. Warren folded the document carefully and placed it back in the tin. Outside, snow began again, light against the windows. He looked toward the road, toward Brierfall, toward St. Oran Pass, hidden beyond the dark pines. For the first time since stepping off the bus, Warren understood the shape of the fight. It was not land against money. It was memory against convenience. And somewhere between them stood a wounded dog, a dead man's promise, and a house that had begun, very quietly, to ask him to stay. The mountain looked innocent in daylight. That was the trouble with winter in Brierfall. It could cover rot with white, soften broken things with snow, and make a road that had nearly killed a man shine as if it had been blessed. By mid-morning, the sky over Northstar Hollow had cleared into a pale, polished blue. Sunlight ran across the field, bright enough to hurt the eyes, and every pine branch held its burden of snow with the dignity of an old priest holding silence. Warren stood on the porch with his field jacket zipped over his olive combat shirt, the brass dog whistle from Silas's tin box in his gloved hand. It was small, dull with age, worn smooth where fingers had held it for years. Astra saw it and went still, not afraid, not calm either. Her notched ear angled forward, and something in her long yellow-black body tightened, as if a memory had passed through the air without asking permission. Milo, who had been trying to murder a strip of loose bark near the steps, paused with the bark still in his mouth and looked from Astra to Warren with the solemn confusion of the very young. Warren did not blow the whistle. He only closed his hand around it. "No ghosts today," he said softly. Astra watched him for one more second. Then she turned toward the eastern road. That was where she had been wanting to go since dawn. "Doctor?" Naomi Keene arrived 10 minutes later in a mud-splashed veterinary truck that sounded like it had survived 3 owners and disapproved of all of them. She stepped out wearing her blue-gray field coat, hair tied low, medical bag in one hand, and a thermos in the other. "You look like a man about to make a bad decision slowly," she said. Warren looked toward the road. "I thought I'd invite witnesses. That doesn't make it good." "No." She studied Astra, then the whistle in Warren's fist. Naomi's dry expression changed, only a little. "Silas's? Found it in the tin. Don't use it unless you have to." "I wasn't planning to." "Good. Some sounds belong to the dead. The living need time before they hear them again." Warren did not answer. A pickup came rumbling up the drive then, old and green, with a cracked windshield and a snow shovel tied across the rear gate. The man who climbed out moved like a fence post that had survived too many storms to fall now. Hollis Greer was 67, lean and weathered, with a slightly bowed back, a gray beard rough along his jaw, and hands large enough to look carved rather than grown. His pale eyes sat deep beneath heavy brows. He removed his wool cap when he saw Warren. Not formally, more like a man acknowledging the return of someone who belonged to both grief and land. "You've got your grandfather's shoulders," Hollis said. Warren almost asked whether that was a compliment or a warning. Instead, he said, "You were Silas's friend. Some years better than others." That answer made Warren like him more. Hollis looked past him to Astra. For a moment, the old man's face lost its hard mountain set. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered. "Astra." The dog did not go to him. She stood beside the porch steps, body low, Milo tucked close behind her. But her eyes stayed on Hollis without the sharp distrust she had shown most people. Something older moved there. Recognition, perhaps, or the shadow of it. Hollis swallowed. "I thought you were gone, girl." Naomi's voice softened. "A lot of people did." The 4 of them took the eastern road after leaving Milo, shut safely inside the cabin with food, water, and a towel. He immediately began dragging across the floor as if preparing for a campaign. Astra did not lead like a dog solving a mystery. She did not charge ahead, nose to the ground, triumphant and certain. She moved in broken measures, a few steps forward, then a pause, a turn of the head toward a tree line, a sudden refusal at a shallow ditch. Once, she stopped near a snow-buried fence post and stared at it long enough for Warren to notice old scrape marks in the wood. It was not evidence by itself. That was the point. Astra was not telling them what had happened. She was showing them where pain had left its fingerprints. The road climbed toward St. Oran Pass, winding between pines and open cuts of stone. Snow lay bright on the shoulders. Beneath it, Warren saw the hard grammar of winter terrain, where wind had scoured the surface, where ice hid under powder, where tracks had been softened but not erased. Hollis walked with a staff and surprising speed. "Silas used to take this road in storms," he said. "Told him he was too old for it." "What did he say?" "That I was too ugly for advice, but he listened anyway." Naomi made a sound that might have been a laugh. Warren looked at the old man. Did he? Not usually. They reached the lower ridge before noon. The old storm shelter sat beneath a stand of pines where the road narrowed, half built into the slope to resist wind. Its roof was low and steep, designed to shed snow. A faded sign hung crooked above the door. Northstar Winter Shelter. The letters had been painted over once, badly. Beneath the newer paint, Warren could still see the older hand of Silas, plain, uneven, stubborn. The door hung from one hinge. Astra stopped 20 feet away, her body lowered. Warren felt Naomi glance at him, warning without words. He did not pull the dog closer. He handed the loose strap to Naomi and approached the shelter with Hollis. The inside smelled of damp wood, old ash, and neglect, not age. Neglect had a different smell. It was the scent of a place that had been emptied with intent. The shelves along the wall were bare. A cabinet marked emergency rations stood open, its latch broken. The radio mount remained bolted near the back table, but the radio unit hung at an angle, battery compartment open and empty. A stack of firewood should have been stored in the dry corner beneath the tarp. Instead, only bark scraps and sawdust remained. Hollis stood in the doorway, breathing hard. Son of a... Naomi said his name once. He stopped. Not because he lacked the word, but because the room was too quiet for it. Warren crouched near the stove. Cold ash lay in the belly of it, old but not ancient. Someone had used the place after it had been stripped, or tried to. He opened the lower drawer, empty. Could this be vandalism? He asked. Hollis gave a bitter laugh. Vandals don't take radio batteries and leave the mount. Naomi crossed to a wall where paint had peeled in wide strips. She touched the exposed wood lightly. Someone painted over this. Warren joined her. Beneath the flaking whitewash, letters showed through in the old cabin-brown wood. Not painted, carved. Hollis stepped closer, and for the first time since they arrived, his face looked younger and more wounded. Warren scraped gently with the edge of his pocket knife until the words came clear enough to read. If you survive the storm, leave wood for the next soul. For a moment, no one spoke. Outside, Astra gave a low sound. Not a bark, not a growl. A breath pulled through memory. Warren looked at the words Silas had cut into the wall. They were not noble in the polished sense. They were not made for plaques or speeches. They were a rule, simple as bread. Live through the night. Leave something behind. He thought of Alden Crosswell in his charcoal coat, speaking of infrastructure and economic opportunity. He thought of his aunt's voice. Walk away clean. Clean men did not always leave warmth behind them. Sometimes they took it and called the room improved. Naomi found the plastic shard near the back door. It was half buried under dirt and old snowmelt, white with a blue curve printed across one side. She held it by the edge and turned it toward the light. Warren recognized the color from Alden's business card. White Crown Ventures. The logo was damaged, but not enough. Hollis knelt outside near the slope, one gloved hand pressed to the snowpack. Tracks froze under the last storm, he called. Old trailer marks, heavy load, not from a hiker. Warren stepped out and saw the faint paired grooves where a small utility trailer had once cut through slush, then frozen, then been softened by new snow. They led away from the shelter toward an old service track. Astra would not follow them. She stood rigid near a cluster of rocks, staring toward the lower tree line. Warren went slowly to her side. There, half hidden beneath a drift, was a short length of chain. Not the same chain from the roadside, but the same type, cheap, galvanized, with one twisted link snapped open. Warren lifted it with a stick, not his hand. A faint reddish-brown stain marked one edge, old and weathered. Naomi's mouth tightened. She was here, Warren said. Naomi looked at Astra. Or someone kept her here after. Hollis turned away. The motion was small, but Warren saw shame in it. The old man walked a few steps downhill, stopped near a boulder, and removed his cap. Wind moved through his gray hair. Warren waited. Some confessions needed to arrive under their own power. At last Hollis spoke without looking back. They didn't find Silas in his bed. The mountains seemed to draw in around them. Warren said nothing. Hollis kept his gaze on the pines below. Town version was easy. Old man died in winter. Happens. People don't like details when the ending's already sad enough. Naomi closed her eyes briefly. You knew? Warren asked her. I knew there was more, she said. Not all. Hollis rubbed one hand over his beard. He was found near the mineral spring. Down past the lower ravine, frozen bad. Still alive when they got to him, but not for long. He had that whistle in his hand. Warren felt the brass whistle in his pocket as if it had grown teeth. He went out here in a storm? Warren asked. He believed something was wrong with the shelter. Hollis's voice roughened. He called me that evening. Said supplies were missing. Said the radio wouldn't hold charge. Said the sign at the fork had been turned. And you didn't come. Hollis turned then. There was no defense in his face, only an old wound that had stopped bleeding but never closed. No, the word hung there. Hollis looked past Warren to the shelter. I told him to wait until morning. Told him he was too old to play Mountain Saint. Told him I wasn't crawling out in a whiteout because he'd found one more thing to be angry about. Warren's jaw tightened. Hollis nodded, accepting the judgment before it was spoken. I was tired, he said. Tired of him taking every broken thing as a personal assignment from heaven. Tired of the calls. Tired of knowing he'd go whether I came or not. His voice dropped. So I let him go alone. Astra stepped forward then. Not to Hollis. Toward the path beyond him. She stopped beside the old man, her shoulder nearly touching his knee. She did not look up. She only stood there, facing the ravine. Hollis covered his eyes with one hand. It would have been easier if the mountain had punished him with accusation. Instead, it offered a dog's quiet presence. And that was worse. Warren looked at the shelter. The missing wood, the stripped radio, the turned signpost visible down the fork, leaning at an angle. No one had stabbed Silas Vale. No one had fired a gun. No one had needed to. Someone had taken away heat, direction, communication, and time. Then winter had done what winter always did when men invited it in. By late afternoon, they returned to Brierfall with photographs on Naomi's phone, the plastic shard wrapped in a paper towel, notes in Warren's field book, and a silence among them that did not ask to be filled. Before going back to Northstar Hollow, Naomi told Warren to stop at the post office. Ask for Maeve Calder, she said. If Silas mailed anything strange in his last months, Maeve remembers. That woman remembers stamps the way priests remember sins. The Brierfall post office occupied a narrow brick building beside the pharmacy. A bell over the door rang with a cheerful sound that had no idea what kind of day it was interrupting. Behind the counter stood a woman with reddish-brown hair clipped carelessly at the back of her head, silver showing near the roots. She was about 50, compact, quick-eyed, and wore a burgundy vest over a denim shirt. Reading glasses hung from a cord around her neck. She looked Warren over once and decided something about him before he spoke. "You're Silas's boy," she said. "Grandson. I know the difference." Around here, boy lasts until a man proves he knows where the snow shovel is. Warren blinked. Naomi, beside him, murmured, "Maeve." Maeve Calder gave Naomi the brief nod of a woman who respected veterinarians because they understood biting patience and bad handwriting. "What do you need?" Maeve asked. "Anything Silas mailed or tried to mail in the last year," Warren said, "especially related to Northstar or White Crown." Maeve's expression shifted, not surprised, not pleased. More like a door inside her had been unlocked from the other side. "I wondered when someone would ask properly." She flipped the counter gate open and led them into the back room, where metal shelves held packages, old forms, damaged envelopes, and the dry smell of paper waiting for weather. Maeve moved quickly, muttering dates to herself. "Silas was a good man," she said over her shoulder. "Also stubborn enough to make a mule seek counseling. Don't turn him into a saint. Saints are useless in winter. They don't accept criticism." Warren followed her between shelves. "You knew him well?" "I knew when he was lying about being fine. That makes one of us." Maeve stopped and looked back at him. The sharpness in her face softened, but not by much. "If you mean to keep his work going, do better than becoming him." The word struck with cleaner force than Warren expected. Maeve turned away before he could answer. "Here." She pulled a dusty gray mail tub from a lower shelf and lifted out a large envelope stamped, "Returned address, undeliverable." The paper was bent at one corner and marked with Silas's handwriting. Inside were copies, not originals. Silas had known better than to send originals. A complaint addressed to the County Emergency Management Office. Photographs of the shelter cabinet emptied. A note about missing batteries, redirected supply deliveries, and unauthorized contractor access. A list of dates. And one name repeated in 3 different places. Doyle Keats, Contract Transport, Mountain Maintenance Subcontractor, White Crown Supply Liaison. Warren read the name once, then again. Maeve watched him. "Doyle Keats," she said. "Drives a silver pickup with a dented rear fender. Smells like diesel and bad decisions. If something went missing on a mountain road, he usually knew whether it rolled, walked, or got paid to disappear." Warren looked up slowly. A silver pickup, a dent near the rear fender. The road on his first day back. Astra chained under a pine. The world did not change shape around him. It became sharper. Naomi saw his face. "Warren?" He folded the copies carefully back into the envelope. "I saw that truck," he said. Maeve's jaw tightened. "Then I hope you remember more than the color." Outside the post office window, snow began to fall again, soft as ash, bright as forgiveness it had not yet earned. Warren held Silas's returned envelope in both hands. The day had not given him a smoking gun, a confession, or a clean villain to drag into the street. It had given him something heavier, a pattern, a shelter stripped, a sign turned, a whistle clenched in a dying hand, a chained dog, a silver truck, and a name, Doyle Keats. Warren looked toward the mountains beyond the glass. Somewhere under that white, a light had been put out deliberately, and for the first time, he could see the hand reaching for the switch. The first person Warren found was not in a courthouse, a sheriff's office, or a room full of files. She was in a laundromat. Maribel Knox's place sat between the pharmacy and a shuttered bait shop, its windows steamed from the dryers and its sign buzzing faintly above the door. Inside, the air smelled of soap, warm cotton, old coins, and coffee that had been reheated with more optimism than science. Maribel was 63, broad-shouldered, silver-brown hair pinned with a pencil, sleeves rolled to the elbow as she wrestled a stack of towels from a dryer. She looked at Warren the way people in mountain towns looked at weather, measuring how much trouble had arrived and whether it planned to stay. "You're Silas's grandson," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Don't ma'am me unless you're bringing me clean tablecloths or an apology." Warren paused. Maribel grunted. "Good. You learn fast." He had come alone. Naomi had kept Astra and Milo at Northstar Hollow that morning, partly for the dog's rest and partly because Warren was beginning to understand something uncomfortable. If Astra appeared, people reacted. Some softened, some lied worse, some remembered too much. He showed Maribel the list from Silas's tin box. Her name was there. Maribel looked at it for a long moment. The sharpness in her face did not leave, but it changed direction, turning inward. 20 years ago, she said. My car died near St. Oran Pass. Heater quit first, then the engine. Snow coming sideways so hard it looked like the Lord was shaking out a flour sack. She folded the towel in her hands, then unfolded it without noticing. I was too proud to stay put. Tried walking. Smart as a spoon, that was. Silas found me after midnight. Had a dog with him then. Not Astra. Older one. Black muzzle, white eyebrows. Mean-looking angel. Warren said nothing. Maribel walked to a shelf behind the counter and pulled out a folded wool blanket. It was old, gray, with a red stripe, darned at the corners with careful stitches. She held it like something borrowed from a chapel. This was from Northstar Shelter, she said. He wrapped me in it, told me if I died after all the trouble he'd taken, he'd be personally offended. Warren almost heard the line in Silas's voice. Why keep it? Maribel's mouth tightened. Because some people give you back your life, and all you can do is keep the receipt. The dryers tumbled behind her like distant thunder. She looked at Warren over the blanket. If anyone says that shelter didn't matter, you send them to me. I have lungs left and opinions sharpened. By noon, Warren had 3 names, 2 written statements, and a paper bag of biscuits. Maribel insisted he take for the puppy, not for you, though you look like you eat sadness with a fork. The humor helped. It also hurt, because each person he spoke to added another piece of weight to Silas's promise. Northstar Hollow had not been a romantic old habit. It had been a net under people who did not know they were falling until someone caught them. Reuben Ash was harder to find. Warren located him behind the old freight garage at the edge of town, where retired trailers sat in rows under snow like tired animals. Reuben was 49, thick through the shoulders, with a trucker's belly, a brown-gray stubble beard, and eyes that looked as if sleep had been avoiding him for years. He wore a faded Navy trucker jacket and a cap with a freight company logo worn nearly blank. When he saw Warren approach, he turned away at once. "I don't know anything," Reuben said. Warren stopped 10 feet back. That was fast. Fast truth saves time, or hides it. Reuben's jaw worked. He kept his hands in his pockets, but Warren could see one thumb rubbing the inside of his palm again and again. "I'm not getting dragged into this," Reuben said. "I got rent. I got a sister in dialysis over in Coeur d'Alene. I got no money for lawyers and no appetite for men in good coats remembering my name. Alden, then. Or men like Alden." Warren let the silence stand between them. He had learned long ago that frightened men often filled silence with the truth if no one chased them into it. Reuben looked toward the garage door. "You military guys think everyone ought to stand up straight and bleed for principle." "No," Warren said. "I think most people are tired." That made Reuben look at him. Warren reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph Naomi had printed that morning. Astra on the blanket at Northstar Hollow, still thin, Milo asleep against her front leg. He held it out. Reuben did not take it, but he looked. The color left his face. Warren saw the recognition before the man could hide it. "You've seen her," Reuben swallowed. "No." "You just did again." Reuben backed a step, then stopped. His eyes stayed on Astra's photograph. "She alive?" he asked. And the question came out smaller than the man. "Yes." The old freight yard creaked in the wind. Somewhere, a loose chain clinked against metal siding, and Warren watched Reuben flinch at the sound. "I saw her in Doyle's truck," Reuben said at last. Warren did not move. "Back of it, not outside. Under a tarp, in one of those wire contractor crates. Muzzle on. She looked bad." He dragged a hand over his mouth. "I thought maybe she was being moved to a vet or something." "You didn't think that?" Reuben's eyes hardened with shame. "No, I didn't." The honesty cost him. Warren could see it. "What about the pup?" "Didn't see a pup then. Maybe later." Reuben shook his head. Doyle Keats worked transport for the maintenance subcontractor. Late deliveries, road supplies, shelter equipment, anything White Crown didn't want on the main invoice. Did he talk? Doyle talks when he wants people scared. Said the dog had made herself a problem. Said some old man trained her too well. Reuben's voice cracked around the last word. "I should have said something." "Yes," Warren said. Reuben looked at him, bracing for more. Warren gave him none. The punishment already lived in the man. There was no need to decorate it. Reuben finally took the photograph. His hands were rough, nails dark with grease, but he held the paper carefully. "If I write this down," he said, "Alden's people will know." "Maybe? That's supposed to comfort me?" "No." Reuben gave a broken little laugh. "You're terrible at recruiting." "I'm not recruiting. I'm asking." "For justice?" "For the next dog Doyle puts in a truck." That landed. Reuben closed his eyes. For a second, he looked like a man standing at the edge of a frozen lake, deciding whether the ice would hold. Then he opened them and nodded once. "One statement," he said, typed, dated. You give it to that lawyer woman, not the sheriff first. I want paper under my feet before the ground starts moving." Warren nodded. "Fair." Reuben looked down at the photograph again. "What's her name?" "Astra." Reuben repeated it softly, as if the name itself was a thing he owed. That afternoon, Warren drove home, with Maribel's blanket folded on the passenger seat and Reuben's unsigned draft statement tucked in his inner pocket. The anger in him had changed. Earlier, anger had been a blade. Simple, clean, eager for a hand to point it toward. Now it felt more like carrying a stove full of live coals across a wooden floor, useful if contained, ruinous if spilled. When he pulled into Northstar Hollow, Astra was on the porch. Naomi stood behind her, arms folded. Blue-gray coat buttoned wrong at the top, as if she had been too busy watching the dogs to notice. Milo sat between Astra's front legs, chewing something that had once been a glove and was now a legal dispute. Astra's head lifted when Warren stepped out. She smelled the air. Then she saw the blanket. The old Northstar wool. Her body went very still. Warren did not bring it closer. He laid it on the porch rail. Astra approached after a long moment. She sniffed the faded red stripe. Her eyes changed not with fear this time, but with a strange, distant attention. Milo tried to climb onto it immediately. Astra blocked him with her shoulder, not harshly. Naomi watched. That meant something. Maribel kept it. Of course she did. Warren looked at her. You say that like you know everyone's secrets. I'm a vet in a small town. I know who pays late, who cries in the parking lot, and which married couples talk more gently to their Labradors than to each other. Milo sneezed into the glove. Warren almost smiled. Then Astra's head snapped toward the road. A vehicle came up the drive slowly, tires pressing clean lines through the snow. Not Doyle's silver pickup, a black SUV this time. Naomi's expression hardened. You expecting company? No. The SUV stopped near the porch. Alden Crosswell stepped out carrying a wicker basket covered with a checkered cloth. He wore a dark overcoat, tailored boots, and leather gloves. Snow brightened his shoulders. He looked less like a man entering someone's land than like a donor arriving at a ribbon cutting. Astra moved, not forward, in front of Milo. Her body became low and rigid. Warren felt his own pulse slow, not calm. Readiness, Alden smiled from the base of the steps. Mr. Vale, I hope I'm not intruding. You are. Naomi made a small sound that might have been approval. Alden's smile accepted the insult as if it were weather. Then I'll be brief. He lifted the basket. Coffee, bread from Copper Elk, a few things from town. I thought perhaps we began too formally. Warren did not move to take it. Alden glanced toward Naomi. Dr. Keene. Alden. Not Mr. Crosswell. Not sir. Just his name, set on the porch like a tool that might be needed later. His eyes shifted to Astra. Only briefly. But Astra saw it. A deep tremor ran through her shoulders. She did not growl. She did not bark. She simply lowered her head and fixed her eyes on his right hand. Alden's gloved right hand. Warren noticed. Alden noticed Warren noticing. The moment tightened, fine as wire. A beautiful dog, Alden said. Naomi's voice went flat. She was more beautiful before someone starved her. Alden's face carried concern perfectly. Terrible. I heard some rumor she had been found. Rumor walks fast, Warren said. In a town this size, faster than mercy sometimes. The line was good. Too good. Alden placed the basket on the bottom step rather than come closer. I wanted to speak plainly. White Crown is preparing a final offer, better than the first. Enough to relieve you of all stewardship obligations, legal costs, repairs, and road liabilities. Warren stood at the top of the steps. Behind him, the cabin breathed warmth through its open door. In front of him stood a man who had learned to make surrender sound like kindness. And the shelter? We would replace it with something safer, staffed, modern, integrated into the resort's emergency network. Free? Alden's smile paused. Accessible, he said. Naomi let out a humorless breath. Alden turned his attention back to Warren. Brierfall cannot survive on nostalgia. Silas did what he could in his time, but his time has passed. Astra's body dropped another inch. Alden began removing his gloves, slowly. Perhaps because the leather was damp. Perhaps because he wanted his hands free for the envelope inside his coat. Perhaps because habit was stronger than caution. The right glove came off first. A scar ran along his thumb, pale, long, slightly raised. Astra's reaction was not loud. It was worse. She became silent in a way that seemed to remove sound from the porch. Her ears flattened. Her eyes locked onto that thumb, as if the scar were not skin, but a door opening onto a room she had survived. Milo sensed her change and pressed backward against her chest. Warren remembered Silas's log from the tin. Complaint entry. Damaged rescue cabinet. Possible forced latch. Blood smear near lock. Man with right thumb torn on metal edge. Alden looked down at Astra. For the first time since arriving, his face did something unplanned. Annoyance. Tiny. Quick. Gone. But real. Warren saw it. Naomi saw it. Alden slipped his glove back on. Animals remember pain strangely, he said. Warren stepped down one stair. Men remember mercy worse. The smile on Alden's face cooled. Careful, Warren. There it was at last. Not a threat dressed as business. A warning, still wearing a good coat. Alden reached into his coat and removed an envelope, thick and cream-colored. He set it atop the basket. Dire. Legacy is heavy, he said softly. Men already tired from carrying one life often get crushed trying to carry another. Warren came down one more step. Naomi shifted slightly, not to stop him, but to remind him that she was there. Astra did not move from Milo. Warren looked at Alden's gloved hand. Then at the envelope. Then at the road behind him, where snow covered every track eventually, if no one cared to look before the next storm. He wanted, with a sudden clean force, to put Alden against the side of the SUV and ask him what Doyle Keats had done. He wanted to hear the man's breath change. He wanted the world to simplify into leverage and consequence. Instead, Warren stayed where he was. Because Reuben had not signed yet. Because Maribel's blanket sat on the porch rail. Because Astra was shaking behind him. Because Silas had not built Northstar by winning fights in driveways. No, Warren said. Alden tilted his head. No? No basket? No offer? No more visits without calling. Alden studied him. For a moment, the polished surface thinned, and Warren saw the machinery underneath. Calculation, irritation, adjustment. Then the warmth returned. Think carefully, Alden said. The county will. He turned and walked back to the SUV. Astra watched until the vehicle disappeared down the drive. Only then did she exhale, not a sigh. A release from a place deeper than lungs. That evening, Warren did not call Francis. He did not drive after Alden. He did not go looking for Doyle Keats. He loaded the truck with firewood. Naomi helped without asking why. Hollis arrived near dusk, after Warren called him once and said only, "I'm opening the shelter." The old man brought tools, a lantern, and the expression of someone grateful to be given work instead of comfort. Together they drove to the Northstar winter shelter beneath St. Oran Pass. The sky was clear. Stars appeared early over the black shoulders of the pines. Their breath smoked in the lantern light as they shoveled snow from the threshold, tightened the hanging door, cleared the stove, and stacked wood in the dry corner. Warren placed Maribel's old blanket on the shelf, not as evidence, as beginning. Naomi set a first aid kit in the cabinet. Hollis fixed a temporary latch on the door and swore at it affectionately until it behaved. Warren installed a battery-powered emergency radio on the back table and tested the signal twice. Static answered first. Then a weather band voice came through, thin and mechanical, announcing falling temperatures after midnight. Hollis looked at the stove. Silas would say, "We stacked the wood wrong." "Yes," Warren said. Then he'd restack it himself and complain his back hurt. "Probably." Hollis nodded. "Good. Then we did it right enough." Warren lit the stove. The flame caught slowly. It glowed orange against the iron, then deepened. Heat began to move through the little shelter, touching the bare shelves, the carved words on the wall, the repaired door, the radio, the old blanket. If you survive the storm, leave wood for the next soul. Warren stood back and watched the light steady itself. This was his answer to Alden Crosswell. Not a fist, not a threat, not yet a legal victory. A door that opened, a fire that held, a place where winter would not get the final vote. Outside, Astra stood in the snow beside Milo, who was trying to chew Hollis's bootlace and losing with enthusiasm. The mother dog looked at the shelter door, then at Warren. This time, she did not tremble. Warren stepped out into the cold and pulled the door nearly shut, leaving the lantern burning inside for a while longer. From the road below, the shelter window glowed through the trees. Small, stubborn, alive. Snow fell like silver dust on the morning of the hearing. It did not storm. It did not rage against the windows or bury the roads in drama. It simply descended over Brierfall with quiet patience, brightening rooftops, softening tire tracks, touching the shoulders of men and women who walked toward the county building, as if each of them carried something fragile under their coats. Warren Vale arrived early. He wore no uniform, no medals, no symbol that asked the room to respect what he had survived. Just a dark flannel shirt beneath his brown canvas jacket, his boots cleaned but still scarred, his father's watch on his left wrist, and the brass whistle from Silas's tin box tucked in his pocket. Frances Bell met him at the bottom of the courthouse steps. She wore a charcoal suit, a cream blouse, and the expression of a woman who had sharpened herself on paperwork and small-town arrogance for 4 decades. Her black fountain pen rested in the spine of the folder she carried against her chest. "You slept badly," she said. Warren looked at her. "Good morning to you, too. It may become one. Do not improvise unless I ask you to. That your legal advice? That is my human advice." "My legal advice is more expensive and only slightly kinder." Behind her, Hollis Greer climbed the steps with both hands shoved into the pockets of his gray wool coat, his old cap held under one arm. Maeve Calder followed, carrying a leather satchel so full of envelopes and copies it looked ready to confess on its own. Maribel Knox came last, wearing a heavy green coat over her laundromat clothes, the old Northstar blanket folded carefully in her arms. Reuben Ash stood near the entrance, alone. He looked like a man waiting outside his own judgment. His faded trucker cap was gripped in both hands. His shoulders were hunched, not from cold, but from the old habit of trying to occupy less space when powerful people were nearby. Warren approached him. Reuben glanced toward the parking lot, then toward the courthouse door. "I can still leave," he said. "Yes." Reuben blinked at him. Warren did not soften the answer. "Will you stop me?" "No. That's supposed to help? It's supposed to be true." Reuben looked down at the cap in his hands. Snow had melted along the brim. "I keep thinking of her in that crate." "Astra?" Reuben nodded. Warren said, "Then bring that thought inside." The man swallowed once. "All right." Inside, the hearing room was not grand. It had beige walls, a county seal behind the raised table, rows of wooden chairs, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and windows tall enough to show the snow falling beyond them. It was the kind of room where life-changing decisions were made under bad lighting by people pretending paper could keep emotion from entering. Alden Crosswell sat near the front with 2 attorneys from White Crown Ventures. He wore a dark suit, a navy tie, and a black overcoat folded neatly over the chair beside him. His hair was perfect. His right hand, scarred thumb hidden beneath the table, rested on a folder embossed with the White Crown logo. When he saw Warren, he gave a small nod, almost respectful. Almost. Warren sat beside Francis. Naomi was not in the room. She waited outside in the corridor with Astra and Milo, both on soft harnesses. The decision had been Warren's. Astra would not be dragged in as a prop. She had already given enough without being made to perform her pain for strangers. Still, Warren knew she was there. Some presences did not need a seat. The county board entered at 9 sharp. 3 members, 2 clerks, and a legal examiner from the county land office. The chair, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes named Patricia Holcomb, called the hearing to order. White Crown spoke first. Their lead attorney was smooth, narrow-faced, and precise, with a voice that sounded as if it had never once been interrupted by weather. He did not call Silas foolish. He called him beloved but aging. He did not call Warren unstable. He called him recently discharged and not yet demonstrably established in the community. He did not call Northstar Covenant worthless. He called it a noble framework whose operational viability had lapsed. Warren listened. Francis had warned him about language like that, words wearing gloves. The attorney showed photographs of the empty shelter, the broken radio, the bare shelves, the damaged door. Evidence of neglect, he said. Proof that Northstar Hollow had failed its community obligations under Silas Vale's stewardship. Warren's hand tightened beneath the table. Alden watched without expression. Then came the question Warren had expected and still hated. "Mr. Vale," the attorney said, turning toward him, "you returned to Brierfall only recently, correct?" "Yes." "After completing military service?" "Yes." "Long-term service in a high-stress combat role?" Francis's pen moved once across her page. Warren kept his voice even. "Yes." "And you have not maintained permanent residence in Brierfall for many years?" "No." "You have no prior experience managing a public access storm shelter?" "No." "No formal land trust administration experience?" "No." "No county emergency certification?" "No." The attorney gave the board a modest look, as if the facts themselves were embarrassed on Warren's behalf. "Would you agree," he continued, "that grief, recent transition from military life, and personal attachment to your grandfather's memory may affect your judgment regarding this property?" The room became very still. Warren felt the answer rise in him hot and clean. "Would you agree that men in expensive suits often call grief irrational because it refuses to sell? Would you agree that some people strip a shelter, turn a sign, and then photograph the emptiness as evidence? Would you agree that you are standing close enough for me to teach you the difference between patience and weakness?" His pulse slowed, not from peace, from danger. Then, from the hall outside, came a small sound. Astra, not a bark, not a cry. A low, uneasy whine, quickly quieted by Naomi's soft voice. It reached Warren through the closed door like a hand on his shoulder. He looked down at his own fingers. They had curled into a fist. Slowly, he opened them. Francis did not look at him, but her pen stopped moving. Warren lifted his eyes to the attorney. "I agree grief affects judgment," he said. "So does money. So does shame. So does wanting land to become profitable enough that people stop asking what it used to be for." The attorney's mouth tightened. Warren continued, quieter now. "I came back recently. That's true. I don't know everything yet." "That's also true. But I know the difference between something neglected and something stripped." For the first time that morning, the board members looked up from their papers. Francis leaned back a fraction, not smiling, but almost. Then the witnesses began. Maribel Knox spoke first. She did not approach the table like a woman eager to perform. She carried the old blanket in both arms and laid it before the board with the care of someone setting down a life. 20 years ago, she said, I was found half frozen near St. Oran Pass. Silas Vale brought me to Northstar Shelter. There was wood. There was heat. There were blankets. This blanket. I kept it because some debts don't fit in thank you cards. The White Crown attorney tried to suggest memory could soften with time. Maribel looked at him over her reading glasses. "Honey, I forget where I put my keys. I do not forget the blanket I thought I might die under." The room shifted. A few people breathed out. Reuben Ash came next. He walked to the front as if every step cost him money. When he sat, he kept his cap in his lap and twisted it once before Frances gently touched the table. "Hands still," she murmured. He obeyed. His voice shook at first. He admitted he had worked transport for a contractor linked to White Crown. He admitted he had seen Doyle Keats move supplies off route. He admitted he had seen Astra in a wire crate in Doyle's truck, muzzled and weak, months before Warren found her chained on St. Oran Road. The attorney pressed him hard. Had he reported it? No. Had he continued accepting contractor work? Yes. Was he speaking now to protect himself? Reuben looked at Warren, then at the board. "I'm speaking now because I didn't speak then," he said. "And that dog paid before I did." No one spoke for several seconds. Naomi entered after Reuben. She did not bring Astra inside. She brought medical records, photographs, and a veterinary statement written in the blunt language of wounds. Her voice stayed dry, steady, exact. She described the old harness marks, the neck trauma, the signs of starvation, the condition of Milo, the inconsistencies in Astra's supposed private transfer. When asked whether the dog's condition proved White Crown's involvement, Naomi said, "No, I am a veterinarian, not a fortune teller. It proves abuse, neglect, improper restraint, and a fraudulent transfer history that deserves investigation." The attorney seemed displeased by her restraint. The board seemed impressed by it. Maeve Calder followed with the returned envelope from Silas. She had organized every copy in order. Dates, postage marks, county intake references, notes about missing batteries, redirected supplies, unauthorized access, and the name Doyle Keats appearing in Silas's complaint. The White Crown attorney asked whether old returned mail should be trusted as evidence of anything. Maeve looked at him the way a postal clerk looks at someone who thinks stamps are decorative. "Returned mail doesn't become imaginary because it inconveniences a developer," she said. "It becomes returned mail. There's a difference. I've spent 27 years explaining that to people who lick envelopes badly." Even Patricia Holcomb, the chair, had to look down for a moment. Hollis Greer spoke last among the witnesses. He did not bring charm, he brought weight. He told them Silas had called him the night before he died, told him the shelter had been tampered with, told him the sign at the fork had been turned, told him the radio was dead. Hollis's voice roughened, but he did not hide from it. "I told him to wait," he said. "I told him he was too old to go. I didn't go with him. That was my failure." But Silas Vale did not forget that shelter. He died trying to check on it. The room did not move. Outside, snow continued to fall. Frances then stood. She was not dramatic. Drama would have insulted the facts. She laid out the Northstar Covenant as it had been written. She showed the pattern. A shelter stocked for decades, then suddenly stripped. A dog transferred on paper, then found abused. Supplies redirected. Complaints returned or unanswered. A developer requesting review after conditions had been made to look like neglect. Then she produced the 1,994 rescue record. Alden Crosswell's name traveled through the room before anyone said it aloud. People saw it on the document. Heads turned slightly. Frances did not look at Alden. She looked at the board. "This is not offered to embarrass Mr. Crosswell," she said. "It is offered because his own signed statement confirms that Northstar Shelter was functional, vital, and competently managed under Silas Vale. It also confirms that the system White Crown now calls obsolete once saved the life of the man currently advocating for its removal." The document passed from hand to hand. Alden remained still, too still. When his turn came, he rose with the grace of a man who had practiced losing nothing in public. "I have never denied Silas Vale helped me," he said. "I was young, foolish. I owe him gratitude. But gratitude cannot be a county policy. We cannot preserve every old structure because memory warms it." His voice was calm, almost sad. "Brierfall needs roads cleared, jobs created, emergency systems modernized. If contractors mishandled supplies, that should be investigated. If Doyle Keats acted improperly, he should answer for it. But do not confuse my support for progress with cruelty." It was good. It might have worked in a room that had not heard Maribel speak of the blanket, Reuben speak of silence, Naomi speak of wounds, Maeve speak of paper, Hollis speak of the dead. But truth, once spoken by enough ordinary mouths, became harder to smooth over. Warren watched Alden. The man had not collapsed, had not raged, had not shown guilt like a villain in a cheap story. He had simply moved responsibility away from himself, inch by inch, laying it at the feet of contractors, time, economics, age, weather. Warren understood then why Alden was dangerous. He did not need lies to sound false. He needed them to sound reasonable. The board recessed for 23 minutes. No one in Warren's group spoke much in the hallway. Naomi sat beside Astra on a bench, one hand resting near the dog but not on her. Milo slept against Naomi's boot, exhausted by the grand civic importance of chewing a shoelace earlier. Astra saw Warren and rose. She did not pull toward him. She only stood, waiting. Warren crouched a few feet away. "Not done yet," he said softly. Her dark eyes held his. Not comfort, recognition. As if both of them understood that waiting could be harder than running. When the board returned, Patricia Holcomb read the decision in a voice that had carried bad news before, and knew better than to decorate it. The county would suspend all transfer and development review involving Northstar Hollow. An investigation would be opened into White Crown contractors, Doyle Keats, and the handling of emergency shelter supplies. Northstar Covenant would remain active. Warren Vale would be granted provisional stewardship for 12 months, during which he must demonstrate restoration of shelter operations, maintenance logs, public access compliance, and coordination with county emergency channels. It was not victory. It was not defeat. It was a door left open with conditions attached. Frances exhaled through her nose. Maribel whispered, "Good enough to start." Across the room, Alden gathered his papers slowly. For once, no one approached him first. No hand landed on his shoulder. No easy admiration softened the path to the door. He looked at Warren only once. No smile. No warmth. Just a clear, measuring look. Then he left. Outside, the snow had brightened the courthouse steps until they looked almost newly made. Warren came out last. Naomi stood near the stone railing with Astra and Milo. The puppy had snow on his nose and no understanding of legal nuance. Astra stood tall beside Naomi, still thin, still marked, but no longer folding herself away from the world. When Warren reached the bottom step, Astra walked to him. No command, no coaxing. She crossed the space between them with slow dignity, stopped in front of him, and placed her head into his open hand. Warren did not close his fingers at once. He let her choose the contact. Then, gently, he rested his palm against the warm, scarred crown of her head. Behind them, people descended the courthouse steps into the falling snow. Some talked, some hurried away. Some looked toward Warren with uncertainty, as if deciding whether they had witnessed a legal matter or the first breath of something older than law. Warren looked down at Astra. They had not won Northstar Hollow. Not yet. They had been given time. And sometimes, he thought, time was the first mercy. Brierfall did not become kinder overnight. That was the first mercy, though Warren Vale did not recognize it immediately. If the town had changed all at once, if every face had softened and every voice had agreed, it would have felt like a lie told for comfort. Instead, the days after the hearing came the way mountain days always came, cold at the edges, bright when the clouds allowed it, and honest enough to show where the work still waited. Some people thanked him. A few left firewood stacked on the porch without knocking. One man at the feed store told Warren he had ruined the best chance Brierfall had seen in 30 years. He said it while buying dog food, which Warren considered a small theological complication and chose not to mention. White Crown Ventures did not vanish. Its attorneys sent letters with clean margins and careful words. Alden Croswell released a statement expressing concern, cooperation, and disappointment. 3 words that could wear a suit and steal a chair at a funeral. Doyle Keats was under investigation for animal abuse, property damage, false transport records, and contractor fraud, but Warren knew enough not to confuse investigation with justice. The machine had lost a gear. It had not yet stopped turning. So Warren worked. Every morning before sunrise, he split wood behind the cabin, while the sky softened from black to blue. He checked the radio at the Northstar shelter. He logged supplies in a binder Francis Bell had labeled with terrifying precision. He shoveled the path clear after each snowfall. He learned the county forms, the inspection schedule, the language of emergency access, and the quiet humiliation of asking for help. That last part was the hardest. Warren had spent most of his adult life being useful by carrying more than other men asked of him. At Northstar Hollow, usefulness looked different. It looked like calling Hollis Greer when a roof brace needed 2 people. It looked like letting Maeve Calder correct his record-keeping system with the ruthless joy of a woman who believed bad filing was a moral failure. It looked like accepting 3 boxes of donated blankets from Maribel Knox and not saying he could manage without them. "You can manage with them too," Maribel told him, thrusting the boxes into his arms. "Try variety. It builds character." Milo, now heavier by the week and no wiser for it, climbed into one box and fell asleep on a pile of folded wool. Maribel looked down at him. "Well," she said, "at least one of you understands proper use of inventory." Astra recovered more slowly. Her body gained strength before her trust did. The hollows along her ribs softened. Her yellow-black coat began to shine in patches, gold returning to her chest and legs like sunlight remembered by fur. The black mantle over her back looked less like ruin and more like armor again, but chains still made her turn to stone. Leather gloves made her watch hands too carefully. The sound of a truck slowing near the road could bring her from sleep to standing in one breath. Warren did not ask her to be better faster than truth allowed. He walked the boundary with her in the mornings, using a loose green harness that touched none of the scarred places at her neck. Some days, she trotted beside him with quiet confidence. Other days she stopped near the pines and looked toward the road where he had found her, her notched ear tilted, her body remembering what the present had not done. On those days, Warren stopped too. He did not speak much. He had learned that not every wound wanted language standing over it with a lantern. Milo, however, believed most wounds could be improved by biting Warren's bootlaces. He grew into his paws badly, in the proud tradition of young shepherds everywhere. His ears continued their private civil war, one upright, one uncertain. He barked at his reflection in the stove door. He carried kindling pieces into places where kindling did not belong. He once dragged Maeve's knitted glove under the kitchen table and defended it with the expression of a revolutionary protecting sacred ground. Astra watched him with grave patience. Warren watched Astra watching Milo. That was how he understood the house was changing. Northstar Hollow no longer felt like Silas's absence arranged in rooms. It had become a place where a puppy could make poor decisions at speed, where a wounded dog could sleep without keeping both eyes open, where the stove burned late and someone always needed more towels. Naomi Keene came twice a week at first, then once, then whenever she claimed she was in the area, which usually meant she had driven 6 miles out of her way with medicine, paperwork, or coffee. She helped Warren turn the old side shed into a temporary recovery space for abandoned working dogs. Nothing grand, clean straw, heat lamps, crates with doors tied open unless medically necessary, a cabinet of supplies, a hand-painted sign Maribel criticized and then secretly repainted herself. Francis finalized the provisional stewardship documents and spoke of compliance deadlines with the grim affection of a general planning a winter campaign. Maeve restored the old rescue team records, muttering over dates and smudged signatures as if scolding the dead into better administrative habits. Hollis taught Warren the forgotten trails Silas had used: the cut through Copper Ridge, the safer descent near the mineral spring, the place where wind carved snow into false ground over the creek. Reuben Ash came every Friday with supplies in the back of his truck. He never arrived empty. Sometimes it was canned food, sometimes batteries, sometimes coffee. Once, a bag of dog treats he pretended had been on sale and not chosen with nervous care. Astra did not go to him. Not at first. Reuben never asked her to. He set supplies down, stepped back, and nodded at her, like a man paying respect to someone he had failed. That was all. It took 3 weeks before Astra crossed the porch and sniffed the cuff of his jacket. Reuben stood very still. When she stepped away, he turned his face toward the truck and wiped one eye with the back of his hand as if the wind had committed an offense. By the 4th week, the shelter was ready to open under its new name, Northstar Winter Haven. There was no ceremony. Warren refused one. Patricia Holcomb from the county suggested at least a ribbon. Maeve said ribbons were for hair and grand openings that served cupcakes. Maribel threatened to bring cupcakes anyway, then did, because principles had limits when frosting was involved. But there was no speech, no stage, no photograph with Warren in the center pretending one man had done what many hands had carried. There was only the shelter beneath St. Oran Pass, cleaned and stocked, with a stove ready, dry wood stacked, blankets folded, radio working, first aid kit mounted, maps sealed in plastic, coffee packets in a tin, and a ledger on the table. On the first page, Warren wrote, "If this place helps you through the night, leave something for the next soul." He stared at the sentence for a long time after writing it. Silas's words had changed in his hand. Not much. Enough. Less command. More invitation. Outside, Astra stood near the door. She looked into the shelter, then back at Warren. Snow had begun to fall in slow, harmless flakes. Milo tried to climb a shallow drift and tumbled backward with tremendous personal dignity. Hollis laughed so hard he had to lean on his shovel. The shelter saw its first guest 6 nights later. Warren was at Northstar Hollow when the radio crackled at 9:17 p.m. A truck driver stranded near St. Oran Pass. Adult male. Hypothermia risk. Vehicle disabled. County response delayed by ice farther down the grade. Warren reached for his jacket, but the second message came through before he could move. The driver had found the shelter. He was inside. Fire started. Radio functional. No immediate medical emergency. For a moment, Warren stood in the kitchen without moving. The stove in his own cabin burned low. Astra lifted her head from the rug. Milo slept upside down beside her, one paw twitching as if chasing a dream large enough to deserve pursuit. Naomi's voice came over the radio from the county channel, confirming the driver was stable and would wait until road crews cleared access. Then another voice came through. Rough, shivering, alive. "Whoever stocked this place," the driver said, "tell them thank you." The radio clicked. Static returned. Warren lowered himself into the chair at the kitchen table. Astra rose and came to stand beside him. He put one hand near her, not on her. After a few seconds, she lowered her head beneath his palm, not because of fear, not because of need, because she chose to. Warren closed his eyes. All the court papers, all the arguments, all the money and polished words and legal thresholds, none of them disappeared. The year of provisional stewardship still stood ahead like a long winter road. Alden still had attorneys. Doyle still had excuses. The county still had forms that seemed designed by men who disliked trees and people equally. But somewhere under St. Oran Pass, a living man was warm because the door had opened. That was enough for one night. Near the end of winter, Warren carved a sign for the road. He used a piece of sanded cedar from Silas's old shed. His hands were not delicate tools, but they had learned patience. Each letter took time. Shavings fell onto the workbench. Milo stole one and carried it proudly to Astra, who ignored him with queenly restraint. When the sign was finished, Warren rubbed oil into the wood until the grain deepened. Nothing living is disposable. He fixed it near the entrance to Northstar Hollow on a clear evening after fresh snow. Astra stood several feet away, watching the road. The same road. Not the exact tree, not the exact ditch, but the same long white ribbon that had brought Warren home uncertain and had brought Astra to the edge of death. The wind moved across the field, carrying pine, cold earth, and distant wood smoke. For a moment, Astra's body tightened. Warren waited. Milo, deeply committed to ruining solemnity, attacked Warren's left bootlace and pulled backward with all the seriousness of a creature chosen by destiny. Warren looked down. "Milo," he said, "I'm attempting dignity." Milo growled. Astra turned her head. Then, unexpectedly, she gave a low huff. Not quite amusement. Close enough. Warren laughed. The sound came rough and real into the evening. Astra looked toward the road once more. Then she turned away from it and walked back toward the porch. No hurry, no collapse, no victory parade, just a choice. The porch light glowed gold against the falling blue of dusk. Inside, the cabin waited with a warm stove, a sleeping rug, a kitchen table scarred by old knives, and enough life now to make silence feel full instead of empty. Warren followed the dogs inside. Later, he stepped out once more to add wood to the porch rack. Snow fell gently over Northstar Hollow, over the repaired gate, over the pines, over the sign facing the road like a vow. He thought of Silas then, not as a saint, not as a burden, as an old man who had kept a light burning and imperfectly, stubbornly, left enough embers for someone else to find. Warren closed the cabin door behind him. Astra lay before it, head lifted toward the wind. Milo slept on his back near the stove, belly exposed to the world with outrageous trust. And outside, in the bright winter dark, the road passed by Northstar Hollow without taking anyone from it. Not tonight. Sometimes the greatest legacy is not land, a house, or even a name carved into history. Sometimes it is a light left burning for the next weary soul on the road. Warren learned that healing does not always come through grand victories. Sometimes it comes through showing up again tomorrow, stacking the wood, opening the door, and refusing to let any living heart believe it has been forgotten. May we all notice the quiet places where God asks us to leave warmth for someone else. And may we have the courage to keep one small light burning. If this story touched you, share in the comments which moment stayed with you most. And if you believe in stories of loyalty, grace, and second chances, please subscribe and join us for the next one. May peace find your home, and may hope keep its light on for you.